This clip will address data cleaning and why it's important to think about that before data collection if you can. So data cleaning entails all the steps you need to take in order to go from your raw data to the data that can be used for your analyses. So for questionnaires, that involves things like checking values, adding names and labels, checking missing data, sometimes manually checking whether participants are only in a data set once, linking participants to their children, etc., etc. For other types of data, you may also need to do some type of data cleaning or processing. For example, one of the tasks in transition involved completing paper forms, and these needed to be then transferred to Excel, after which skill scores could be calculated. If you do interviews like Natasha, you may need to transcribe them before you can analyze them. You might think that these are all steps that only become relevant after you do the data collection, and it is true that you typically don't start actually cleaning your data before you have completed data collection. You might think that these are all steps that only become relevant after you do the data collection, and it is true that you typically don't start actually cleaning your data before you have completed data collection. However, you can save yourself a lot of time by thinking ahead now to prevent a lot of work later on. Zoe, for example, spent a lot of time changing names of variables later on because she didn't know how important variables names could be at the start of her data collection. I personally found out that having a full home visit videotaped into one file makes that video very unusable. So we had to cut them all up into individual tasks, which took many hours. We could never make a checklist that contains every single step of data cleaning because it's such a project-specific thing. But here are some things that we have run into and that you should definitely take into account. So look at the output of the survey. Maybe you need to rename variables, check whether the scores actually come out the way you want to. So do scales from 1 to 5 actually translate to scores from 1 to 5? Are there missing values that you didn't expect? Calculate any skill scores, check response patterns, etc. If you use video data, think about whether you need to cut them up, if you need to do certain things to anonymize data or pseudo-anonymize them. Maybe you need to do transcriptions of interviews. There is also some software available that automatically transcribes audio, but it's not great yet. Check whether you need to improve the audio or video quality. If you use any paper forms, you may need to scan them in or digitalize them in another way. If you have a full family design or network study, how do you link different informants or people who know each other or report on each other? The following are some very important tips for data cleaning that I think apply to almost everyone. First of all, use your pilot data to practice data cleaning. After you've run your pilots, you have your first set of preliminary data, and you can use this to see what your data would look like. And if you can change the settings or variable names in your questionnaire software now, you won't have to change them later on. So really try to work with your pilot data as if they are actual data to see where you run into problems or which part of data cleaning would take too much time. Lock your raw data files as read-only as soon as you're done collecting data and never edit these. Keep them stored away safely in a place that no one ever touches, and back up. Like every day when you're working on data cleaning, back up what you're working on. I have experience with this, and I am so glad that I backed up. Otherwise, I would have lost so many days of work if we didn't back up. And also keep all these previous versions. Always use syntax or scripts and save these files, and add loads of comments. So a lot of people work with SPSS and R, both of which have excellent ways of storing your scripts and adding comments, and please do so. As a sort of side note on syntax and any kind of programming, a general rule is to have 1 or 2 lines of explanation for every line of code. So I don't think that this applies to data cleaning as literally, but it is a good habit to explain very clearly in your code what you do. Related to that, keep a logbook of your data cleaning. So during data collection, you might also run into things that you need to think, okay, I need to remember this for when I'm data cleaning. So keep all that information in one place, maybe a Word file or some other central place that you can find it. I personally like using OneNote for that. And when you start data cleaning, keep an overview of what has been done and what needs to be done. And track all small decisions and manual changes that you make as well. We work with Student Assistant to help us clean data, and that is a blessing, but it also means a lot of organizing. So if you also work with Student Assistants, I recommend that you create a logbook templates for them, which will also make it easier to discuss their questions or important decisions with you as a coordinator. So start with your priorities, the things that are most important or most urgent to have cleaned. If you have a large unclean data set and you want to start analysis using 3 questionnaires, start with those questionnaires. So don't try to do everything at once, but work step by step. And as I briefly mentioned, having student assistants can help you save so much time. They do need to work very conscientiously, and you need to spend time on coordinating and training them as well, but know that if you ask, there's often some budgets to hire students.